Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Barnes. I'm here tonight to bring you the fourth segment of a program called Chainbreakers, and I'm so glad to be here tonight with you. First of all, the first segment we did, we kind of gave you a history of who we are and what we do. And then the second segment, we started on the 12 steps of recovery that will change anybody's life. We reviewed step one, which we admitted we were powerless over our problem, that our life has become unmanageable. After that, last week we discovered about step two, about coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And we talked about the word sanity meaning complete and whole, and how we get complete and whole by working the remaining of the 12 steps. So tonight we're going to look at step three, where we make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. And in the secular 12-step recovery programs, it's underlined and it's highlighted and it's in italics as you understand him. So tonight, let's go ahead and look at step three, and where it says, made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. But we're going to look, though, tonight at the biblical perspective of that, where it says in Proverbs 3, 5 and 6, trust the Lord completely. Don't ever trust yourself. In everything you do, put God first, and he will direct you and crown your efforts with success. First step is, I'm powerless over my problem. Step two, power. Now we're going to make a decision. Do I turn my will and my life over to the care of this power? Okay? And naturally, God. So, when we take such an honest look at our powerlessness and turn our lives over to the care of God, step one and two, that's when he can actually do something about our dilemma. When we are willing to trust him. Letting go and letting God can be tough, quite similar to jumping off a cliff. Trusting our lives into God's care and asking for his will instead of ours may not have been even considered. What if we don't like his will for us and it doesn't fit into what our plans are? Are we willing to trust him anyway? Has what we have done or tried to do before to solve our problems ever worked? It is time to let him, capital H, have his way, no matter if it's not our way. The last sentence, what do we have to lose besides our life? Step three, make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. I'm sure some of you have heard the analogy of the three frogs sitting on a log. One decides to jump in. How many's left? There's three. Because all he did was decided. Doesn't mean he took action. He's made a decision. So that's what we do in step three. We decide. But then, though, we carry it out with action. To turn our will, which is our thoughts, our life, which is our actions, over to God's care. If I was to die, and a month later, my wife gets a call from the attorney, and the family gets together and they go down to the attorney's office, he's going to read my will. And the first 4 words is going to be being of sound mind. So my will is my thoughts. All that is thoughts in writing. My life, my actions, over to the care of God. Step 1, admitted powerlessness. Step 2, power. Now we're making a decision. Do I want to continue my life the way it is, or do I want to turn it over to God's care? If you're anything like me, I won't go into my details tonight about my past, but I tried this so many times. This time I've got it. This time I'm going to do it. This time it's going to be okay. Well, guess what? I never took any action after that. All I did was make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Well, I've learned through repeated attempts, it takes more than just a decision. It takes action. I'm going to read something to you tonight that explains more and more about step 3. It says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Listen to this. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but invariably we find that sometime in the past we have made decisions based on self, which placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and we are extreme examples of self-will run riot, though we normally don't think so. Above everything, we must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. There often seems to be no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we can never live up to them, even though we'd like to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing to trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. Look at this. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He's the principal. We are His agents. He's the Father, and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, but its concept was a keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, He provided what we needed if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, and we have enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully. Now listen to this. As we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fears of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. A new birth. Says we are now at step 3. Now this right here is the prayer we normally pray for the 3rd step prayer. And it says, God, I offer myself to You to deal with me and to do with me as You will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help in Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Your will always. That's the third step prayer that is commonly used in a lot of programs. So, as we know in Chainbreakers, we go a step farther and we make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of Christ. Any person who's made that decision, whether it be at a Billy Graham crusade or in the smallest of country churches, or a person at their bedside by themselves, has done step 1, 2, and 3. We've made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God through Christ. And this is why this is so important to realize this, that in Chainbreakers, we openly announce Christ as the one who will save us. So with that in mind, I'm going to read a portion in Psalms 32, 3 through 5. Actually, I'm going to start with verse 1. Blessed is he whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man whose sin the Lord does not count against him, and whose spirit is in no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away, though my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me, my strength was sapped as in the heat of the summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and you did not cover up my iniquities. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. And I'll emphasize that word, guilt. I was raised in an environment of a fine, caring Christian home. But the fact is, though, unfortunately, and I know I was raised in church all my life, and I did make that decision at a church camp when I was 14 years old. But I know today I never grew from that decision. I never took any action after that. I know without a doubt the message of God's grace, mercy, and love is taught in my church. But for some reason, though, I didn't hear it. I heard the guilt. I heard the shame. I heard the condemnation. When I was the summer between my senior and when I was a senior in high school, I guess, I got to thinking, no, wait a minute. I've already broken 9 out of 10 of the commandments. I haven't killed anybody. Why would God want anything to do with me? And with that, I left home after high school, went to college. Not to bore you with the details, but I went on a 15-year journey of trying to find it. I never knew what it was, but I was trying to find it. Well, trying to find it got me down to the point where I had no other choice but to reach up. And I asked God, please help me. And that was the prayer. That's all I said was, God, please help me. Before I'd bargained with God, I will give you this if you'll give me that. But this time I had no bargaining power to give. It was just, like the song says, just as I am. So with that, I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God through Christ. Yes, I did get involved in a traditional 12-step program. I did step one, admitting I was powerless over my problem. My life was unmanageable. Yes, I did do step 2. I came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. And yes, I did make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God through Christ. With that, I want to not go into details, but my life has changed. I'm no longer the person I was when I made that decision 36 years ago. I've had the opportunity to see lives change as a result. Not only my life, but thousands of other lives change. With this being in mind, when I read that prayer a while ago, what's called the third step prayer, did you notice not one word was said about chemical dependency? Not one word said about gambling. Not one word said about porn. Not one word was said about codependency. It said, relieve me of the bondage of self. Because we read a while ago, selfishness and self-centeredness, that is the root of my problem. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, I would do anything possible to prove to you who I was not. And I would step on your toes to prove it, just like that paragraph said. So the point is, though, when I was able to truly turn my will, my life over to the care of God, my life changed. So with that in mind, realizing that it's also there for you too. It's all there for anybody. The point is that when we do this third step prayer, we always do it with another person, just for the idea of humility and also for the idea of accountability. Because the next paragraph says that we launched on a course of vigorous action. And we're going to get into that vigorous action next week. And it might take a few weeks to go over what is primarily the essentials of this 12-step program of recovery. But the point is, though, that this is so vital. And I'm going to close this by reading something that I know if you've ever raised in church or have never been to church or whatever, but I'm sure you may have heard this verse before. It's in John 3:16. For God so loved me that he gave me his only Son, that who would ever believe in him would never perish, but have eternal life. Wow. Why wouldn't you want that? Why did I balk at that for so many years? And this is what this step does for us. We make a decision. Do I want my life the way it is, the turmoil, or do I want a life of peace? Do I want a life of self-centeredness, or do I want a life of helping others? Do I want a life that's full of guilt and shame, or do I want to turn it over to a God of love, grace, and mercy? And we do this through his Son, Jesus Christ. I would urge you, if you've never done that before, get with me. You can call me at area code 918-810-4759. You can email me at jpbehb@cox.net, or you can also come every Sunday morning at First Baptist Tulsa. We have a class called Chainbreakers. And Chainbreakers is a class that is unlike any other class that you'd ever see, and especially in a Baptist church. Because the fact is that we get real and we get honest. We help people not off the street, but if you're on the street, that's wonderful. You're also welcome there. But at the same time, though, we welcome people who's sitting on the pew, literally dying because they have nowhere to go within their church. And we can say those magic 2 words that they're begging to hear of I understand. So come join us every Sunday morning, Chainbreakers, First Baptist Tulsa, room 428 North. Or you can reach me at area code 918-810-4759. Thank you very much. I look forward to next week. Thank you.